Hello and welcome everybody to the Pick Six podcast, where I believe everybody is still in the same shave state as we were when Nebraska lost to Iowa on Black Friday. Tom Shatel, Evan Bland, and me, Sam McKewon, coming to you on a Thursday, recapping a fascinating 40 minutes with Matt Rule. We certainly can talk about the Nebraska-Iowa game. Felt like we saw that game about 4 times last season, but we can recap it. Talk a little coaching carousel. Of course, a little Nebraska Creighton basketball on Sunday, maybe a little volleyball. I don't know that we need to talk about the volleyball team, which is going to cruise this weekend. But Tom, Evan, how are you? The season is over. The silly season has begun. How do you feel?
Man, we're just getting rolling, right? We got a new high school commit, a decommit, portal happenings before it even opens. You're right. We're not even into December yet. It's already rolling.
Yeah, it's like the man said yesterday. We're on to the second season, so it's here.
It is. So, yeah, what really happens now, obviously, is the sport's changed a lot. You go back to, 15, 20 years ago, and you hit December, and it gets really quiet. It just does. It used to get really, really quiet. It used to be, especially if you didn't make a bowl game, everything kind of slowed down, and people kind of took a break because they weren't going to go out and secure the recruits again until January. But now you have an early signing day on December 20th, and you have this portal deal. So, you got kids, running out of leaving the program, doing all kinds of stuff. You're going to have some guys maybe decide between the NFL. So the next 45 days is super, super busy. And Matt Rule was kind enough, and I do mean that, to talk with us on the front end of it. So he had a good press conference, about 40 minutes long, on Wednesday. Talked about a variety of issues, including his process, what he does, how he goes through it this week, how he has now, quote, moved on to year 2, unquote. And, a couple of things came out of that, for sure. The first thing that came out of it, one, was he's not ready to make any sort of staff changes, and we can get to that in a minute. The second thing is we turn to the conversation of quarterback very quickly. I'd love to know what you guys think as it relates to both the comment about the portal, how much it costs, what you would do if you went into it, looked for a quarterback, and then his comments about Chubba Purdy and Heinrich Haarberg.
Well, yeah, I wrote about that, and a couple of things he said just struck me right off the bat, and I certainly don't know anything. I'm not going to make any sort of predictions. I think they'll try to get a quarterback, and I think they'll probably get one. But just the fact that he brought up the money, I mean, nobody asked him about the money. He brought it up. I mean, it was just the way he said it was, just so you know. I mean, this is what it costs. And we were saying it's not easy, and in fact, there's going to be a bidding war, and these guys cost money, and just the way he said it to me, like he didn't want any part of that. And then he brings up the line later on from the former Colts GM, Bill Polian, who told him, gave him a piece of advice: don't ever let the most the guy with the most money in your locker room be a free agent. So he's basically saying, would that be a good thing to go get a guy in the portal and give him all this money where he makes the most money on the team? That told me right there, he's not anxious to go into the portal. And this is really interesting because this is what we've always wondered since they hired him a year ago. Is he went away for 3 years, he came back. The college football game has changed. It's about money now. It's about free agency, and how is he going to adapt to that? And we got I thought we got a pretty good hint yesterday how he's going to adapt. He wants to develop what he's got. He wants to keep what he's got, and he wants to develop. And he thinks he can make better quarterback out of Chubba Purdy by making things around him better. So it's fascinating. maybe for Husker fans, it's a little maddening because you want somebody else in there. Again, I think they should go find the next Joe Gans and just let somebody throw passes to his teammates and not turn the ball over and go win games. I don't think that's going to cost $1 million, but he's probably hard to find.
I thought it was interesting. I mean, Matt Rule approached it from a developmental lens. Like he mentioned, Chubba Purdy's been hurt a lot of this year, and maybe his upside's higher than it was. He threw out that nugget that Heinrich Haarberg was not allowed into quarterback meetings at the end of last season. And we know, we've talked about that, Sam. I mean, how that previous staff viewed Haarberg as a quarterback, and it wasn't necessarily favorable at that position. So he continued to back those two. Didn't mention Sims in that line of thinking, and he met with him or is meeting with him here on Thursday as we're recording this, so we'll see how that goes. But you look at the state of that room from a scholarship perspective. You have Daniel Kalen coming in from Bellevue West next year, potentially Haarberg and Purdy back. And yeah, I mean, my thought just listening to him talk was that you have to add somebody to at least push that room. And it's not to say that Purdy or Haarberg couldn't potentially be that guy or whatever. But you have to add somebody. And here we are still days away from the portal officially opening. And you have, I mean, literally dozens of quarterbacks that have already entered in, some with previous ties to Matt Rule or Nebraska, many without, all looking for opportunities. And I think it's worth reminding too that there are going to be a number of players that are going to go in over the next few weeks. There are going to be players that go in the spring. If you remember, Casey Thompson was a guy who transferred after the spring when the writing was on the wall from a depth chart perspective. So like, I thought when Matt Rule said he wants to be very diligent about the process, I think he means that, because this thing's just starting, and this discussion is something we're going to have for months potentially. But like, we're just very early in this process and kind of knowing how it's going to materialize.
How quickly do you think, if you're going to go after a transfer portal quarterback, do you actually have to, get into it with him? I think Jeff Sims had pretty much signed with Nebraska, or was very close to it by the first signing date. I mean, it's fair to say that you want to take some time, but simultaneously, don't you have to get right into this and start making moves in the portal starting like now?
Ideally, but like there's so many moving pieces, right? Like you don't know if that person's going to want to come to your school. You don't know what the financial situation is. You don't know. I mean, as we've talked about on here before, like how do you articulate what the offense is going to be for Nebraska? You're not going to show them tape of this season when they're running option plays and kind of how they went about it. Are you going to show them South Carolina film and say, hey, this is how we do it? Like, there's just a lot to sort through. And I think too, like, players are getting smarter. Like if you think back to Casey Thompson's situation last year, when he went into the portal, like he was especially valued as a talent and a commodity because most of the guys had gone in earlier. So like, is there any inclination for some players to stay in their current situations now and then go in the spring? Like there's just so many moving parts to this thing. Sure, ideally you want to get your guy now, you want him on campus in January, you want to go through spring ball and all the rest. But as Matt Rule said, like they're going to fall into two categories: either a multi-year player they feel like they can develop, or a 1-year instant impact guy. And my sense is that, as Tom said, like the inclination for them pretty clearly is to find a guy that they can mold over the course of multiple seasons.
So not Will Howard. He's got 1 year left.
Yeah. I think he's an instant impact guy.
Not Riley Leonard. He's got 1 year left. He's the guy at Duke. Maybe Alex Van Dyke, who's coming out of the portal at Miami. But obviously Michael Penix had 2 years left, and Bo Nix had 2 years left when they went to Washington and Oregon, respectively. I don't know. I can kind of go both ways on it. Of course, I mean, obviously that's easy to say. On the one hand, I think there's an opportunity to get much better next year, to get good, to be good. And you got enough coming back on defense. You're not going to be able to sell, the build in year two. You're going to have to sell progress, and progress from 5 and 7 is 6-6 or 7-5. And so you need to find somebody who can help you do that. And simultaneously, who's to say that Harburg and Purdy couldn't do that? Harburg won 5 games. I mean, he did. And so he came very close to doing all the things that you'd want to do, and then he got hurt. So do you feel like the two guys on hand, Purdy and Harburg, are good enough to lead this program? Tom, do you think either one of them can be 3/4 of a Joe Gans?
I think Purdy could. I think Harburg is just so inaccurate. His passes they go high and wide, and he would have to clean that up. And I don't know that they have anybody on the staff who is a quarterback coach, and that's why I wonder about the development of those two guys. I also wonder, a lot of these, like Evan said, a lot of these free agent quarterbacks are really savvy. They all have their own guys. They, their own personal coaches, and they may not want to come, and they may not like Satterfield. They may not like the offense. They might, like I said, what kind of offense is it going to be? And that's why I wonder, going forward, can you hire a quarterback guy, because the quarterback portal is going to be so important in college football going forward? Should you have somebody that guys are going to want to, come play for? Maybe, but on the other hand, those guys cost money. And I got the vibe yesterday that that's not where Rule's headed. So, it's it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I think you're right about Harburg. He got him to 5, and of course, sort of that defense. But I just don't know if is that his ceiling. I just wonder. I mean, if he's the guy, it's going to be a running offense, and it's going to be a running quarterback, and he's probably going to get dinged up. But he's it was passing, whether it's the mechanics or just he throws it late or too high, but he's just not accurate. So I like Chubba's. I like his ceiling better, but it's an interesting question. I mean, the whole thing is, and you're right. But I wonder, as far as timing, there's bowl season. Do you wait out bowl season to see who might transfer after bowl season? I'm not sure how that works, if the portal, when the portal closes and all that stuff. But seems to me that after the bowl games, there are probably going to be some guys leaving too.
Yeah, January 2nd is when it closes. I'm curious. I want to ask you, Sam, build Nebraska's ideal quarterback for what they want to do next year, not from an eligibility standpoint, but just from a skill set standpoint. I mean, do they need a Bo Nix, or is it somebody who just can be a game manager? How would you build that out if you were Nebraska?
Tell me what Nebraska's goals are.
Progress, 6-6, 7-5.
I think they can probably get that with Chubba. But I'm not sure that's what you want. I don't think there's a lot of time. I think there's this impression that, oh man, they're going to have 5. No, they're not. No, 5 years. It is not that. I think you have to win. It's getting to the point where things are accelerating very quickly in the sport. There's just not, you're trying to build this $450 million Memorial Stadium expansion and all this other stuff. And I don't think you can scuttle around 5-7, 5-7, 7-5, year 4, it gets done. It seems hard to me. So if you want to get 6-6, I think you can actually probably get there with Chubba Purdy based on what we saw, provided he stays healthy, which he struggled to do. If you want to get better than that, you want to start going 9-3, 10-2. And if you look at the front end of that schedule, you might be able to do it. Then you're probably looking for a guy that's got a minimum of 2 years of starting experience somewhere else, which Jeff Sims had. An accuracy, a completion rate over 60. the ability to run, but moreover a better ability to manage the game and throw, throw from the pocket, make guys make plays. I think most of Jeff Sims' teammates would say they liked him as a leader, so that wasn't the issue. But yeah, I don't know what that looks like right now. Grayson McCall's in there. I don't know what you want to do with him. Riley Leonard's probably going to Notre Dame. Tyler Van Dyke, I don't know. He might be the most talented of the bunch, but he's kind of a wild card. We're just gonna have to see what happens over the next however many weeks. The kid from Texas Tech's interesting. Tyler Show.
Oh yeah.
He was at Oregon and he was at Texas Tech. So there's some interesting ones there. I'll be honest, the kid at Michigan State who did not play against Nebraska, Noah Kim, is not bad. He got hurt and he never came back in. Sam Levitt's in the portal. He played okay against Nebraska. No, I don't. I think it comes down to who's in there and then what you're willing to pay. Will Howard be a great pick, but you're going to have to pay a lot of money, and I don't think Will Howard went into the portal not knowing where he was going to go. So Michigan could be the option for Howard. You could see that happen because JJ McCarthy's not going to be there, and I don't know who their backup is. So Alex Orji is their backup. So, I don't know. Ohio State could be where Will Howard goes. I mean, some of the top programs in the country are going to pursue quarterbacks. So if Nebraska wants to get in that game, they're going to have to pay a lot of money, or they can roll it with Chubba.
Yeah, we don't know who coaching Michigan is going to be either, which is really interesting for them, and that wouldn't happen until the NFL playoffs in January. But one of the names that we kind of left out, maybe I did too, is Daniel Kalen. I mean, he's going to come in next year. He'll probably sit a year, but they've got a guy they like who's going to be in the room next year. So I don't know that you need to go get a guy in the portal who's going to be around for 4 years because, and they're going to go after other guys too. So I just see these quarterbacks in the portal as just sort of like 1 year stopgap guys. I'm maybe 2 year. So like Casey Thompson, they got a lot out of him. They did, not nearly enough, but it's you're right. It's you have to get the right fit, and I think Rule feels good about it, the locker room, and I think he's really concerned about bringing somebody in who's going to upset that. So he might just stand pat. But I'm telling you, if they don't fix the turnover problem on the quarterbacks, if you don't bring somebody in, you've got nobody to turn to.
Right.
If those guys are turning the ball over again, what do? And then all of a sudden, year 2 is a bust. So, I think they absolutely have to get somebody.
And we touched on
Zay Flores. If Zay Flores were to go into the portal, right? In theory.
Well, I think he's somebody to keep an eye on. Absolutely. Because Oklahoma State just got a 4-star quarterback from California.
They did
because they're going that everybody wanted. So, Gundy's not just sitting around. I mean, he's going to get guys. So that quarterback room in Stillwater is always going to be packed.
That's a great point.
I think I don't know how you handle that. I mean, you can't reach out to Flores, but you could certainly, somebody could let his family or people know, I guess. I don't know how that works. I don't even know if he would leave, but I'd keep an eye on him.
Do you guys think Nebraska needs to figure out its staffing situation before it lands the quarterback? Matt Rule laid it out. The vision was for Satterfield to be the offensive coordinator and coach the tight ends and have a separate quarterbacks coach. Does that situation need to be resolved before they go into the portal and find that guy?
I think it's. You think it's not resolved? I mean, I think Satterfield's back, don't you?
Well, I think he's back, but
Yeah.
is he the quarterback's coach, or do they
Well,
hire an additional person and
I
he
think,
fulfills that original vision?
yeah, you can do that now. You can't wait till January or February to do that. Yeah, if you're going to go to the portal, you have to do that now.
I'm just saying, doesn't that complicate the discussion then? If you're talking to a quarterback and you can't even tell them with certainty who your quarterback's coach is going to be?
Yes, it does complicate it. I mean, those are changes you can make, though, when you feel like they need to come up. I don't think it's going to take long to make some of those decisions, but yeah, it does complicate it.
Are they going to hire a quarterback coach?
The challenge that Nebraska has here is that, that again, they've got this question at quarterback with the coach. They got this question at quarterback with the players. They got the question at every other position on offense related to what are you putting around a potential transfer quarterback? And then you've got this pressure from outside, the expectation from the fan base and from donors and from, what do you call it, stakeholders, is that Matt Rhule will do literally anything to improve this team. And in the minds of many, many people, that means getting someone who is not currently on the team to compete at quarterback. So all those things are true at once, and I think that's pretty challenging.
Yeah. Are they going to hire a quarterback coach?
Well, they certainly can.
But I don't think he said that, though, did he?
No.
So I'm under the impression that everything's going to be the same. Because I think if you would make changes, you do them quick.
Well, he talked about possible rule changes with analysts being able to help coach on non-game days. So you could see a situation where Josh Martin goes back into the role that he had before the season, and they hire a quarterback's coach and move Satterfield to tight ends along with offensive coordinator. Like, you could see that playing out.
Or they hire someone who has a lot of experience but doesn't want to be a full-time assistant and do any recruiting anymore as a high-paid analyst who coaches during the week.
Yeah, at quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
and I think that's either that or promoting Adam D. Michelle, but that seems more likely to me, that you bring in some sort of expert to come in and work on the position, but they don't do any game day coaching.
Well, yeah, well, that needs to happen now. You can't wait on that, or all those quarterbacks are going to find a home.
I think that position would be easier to hire at this moment. Like, you could go out and do that because there's just guys that are just sitting, waiting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's guys out there that are just that don't have jobs that for whatever reason, like, I don't know if that does that make sense what I'm saying?
And those guys are going to know what kind of quarterback they want and where the quarterbacks are. But this is something that needs to be done like today or soon, because all this stuff is these guys are going to find homes quick. It's a big game of musical chairs with money, and they're all going to find places to go. So you're going to get stuck with maybe somebody you don't want, but Rhule's got a million things going through his head, but certainly this had to be something that he thought about the last month, the last couple of weeks at least. So, but he said yesterday, I wasn't ready. I'm not ready to do that yet. That tells me he's not ready to do it. So I wouldn't expect it to happen right now, but who knows?
Like, for example, a coach like Ben McAdoo, who was an offensive coordinator for Rhule in Carolina, former NFL head coach, former quarterbacks coach of Aaron Rodgers, former quarterbacks coach of Eli Manning. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Like, that would be intriguing. I'm not saying that I know anything. I'm just saying that, like, that's an example of somebody you can bring in as somebody, you're paying them. I don't know what you're paying them, $300,000-$400,000 a year, and they don't have to go and recruit. And they basically they're like a football lab guy. and that's what they do is they go to work on the football piece of it, but you don't ask them to do a whole bunch else. So that's a thought, like people like that, maybe that could have some insight.
That's what you need. I mean, if you can give a guy, you can give quarterbacks the idea that you're going to come here and you're going to develop, and you might get a chance to go to the NFL. I mean, all these kids want to play, they want money. But yeah, if you can offer that as an attraction, that's what I'm saying. Go get somebody who can help do that. I think the quarterback position in the portal is going to be important every year. So if you have somebody that can bring kids in, or at least make them look at Nebraska, yeah, you got to pay them. But if you can get them to maybe recruits or transfers to look at Nebraska because of who they have coaching quarterbacks, yeah, do it.
I think you'll see some sort of maneuver on offense. I just don't know what it'll be yet. And it does feel like it isn't going to happen this week. But again, it's the first year, so you have an opportunity to kind of run it all back. But you only get the one chance. So, like if this is your family for year 2, then this is your family. But the family only gets to be the family one more time and go 5-7. So, that's probably the way that'll roll. It would, on the defensive side of the ball, there are going to be guys with opportunities, and Nebraska's really going to I think they're going to have to fight tooth and nail to keep some of them, to be really honest with you. I think Tony White, I think they can keep. I think they can pay him market rate, which is more than what he's getting now. I think they can keep him because I think there's very few defensive coordinator roles that would be a move up as it relates to the skill set that Tony wants to develop to get where he wants to go, which is to be a head coach. If somebody doesn't hire him as a head coach, I think Nebraska is a great place to be a defensive coordinator, even compared to some of the SEC schools, because the only thing you're going to acquire in those settings is A, more money, which Nebraska can pay, and B, some sense of like recruiting. But the reality is that Tony White's recruiting areas are mostly on the West Coast. And okay, so USC wants to pursue him. That's great. But I don't know that it changes a ton for him. I mean, their defense was really good last year here this season at Nebraska, and I don't know that I think he likes being here. And so I think if you can pay him what he's worth, which is more than what he's making, I think you can make it worth his while to stay. I do think it's going to be hard. The defensive line coach and the secondary coach, I don't think that's going to be easy, guys. I really don't. I think they're both going to get opportunities, and I think Terrence Knighton could get a really good opportunity in the NFL. I mean, and I don't know how he could easily say no to that if that came up.
You think Cooper would move on? That's interesting to me. He's been the one guy who's stuck with Rule his entire time as a head coach. I guess it'd be interesting to know what his aspirations are. If he wants to be a head coach, or I mean, he's got such a love for talent identification. Like it just seems like he's kind of where he wants to be, but maybe not.
Well, I'm just saying that, I think he's a dynamic guy. I think he left once before to go to Miami of Florida. There's going to be people who know his name. And what if somebody wants to make him a coordinator?
Maybe.
I mean, that's all. I'm just saying, it's all in the mix. Like these guys the defensive coaches are pretty dynamic. And I think Dvorak did a hell of a job too, based on what he had to deal with. But I think he'll stay. But shoot, again, I mean, it's going to be a fight all the way now. Once you have a great defense and you do some of the things they did, if Georgia just lost its cornerbacks coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be the head coach at Syracuse. If Georgia says, "Hey, Evan Cooper, are you interested?" Nebraska can keep him, but it isn't going to just be a slam dunk. I think Nebraska's going to have to battle for some of its defensive coaches. Might have to battle for Raiola too, but I think he'll stay. I think he'll stick around. The commit of Grant Brix tells me that Raiola is all in this program right now. So I think they should feel good there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a problem you want to have, right? Like you want to have your assistants doing jobs to where they're getting attention elsewhere. And some of that's going to be, I think some of their situations will be informed by what happens in the next month. Like, I don't think the next month for Nebraska is going to be as crazy as it was last year in terms of roster churn and all that. Like they added what, 11, I think 11 transfers on signing day last year. They had 12 overall. I don't think they're going to have more than like 4 or 5 personally. Like, and because part of that's because of how they feel about that freshman class, and especially the guys that redshirted in that group. Part of that has to do with stability and all the rest. But like, I just think there's kind of this idea out there that it's going to be this huge overhaul again of the roster in the offseason. I just don't see it. Like, I think your quarterback's the obvious one that we're talking about, probably linebacker, given the state of that room and what they've lost now with Nick Henrich retiring as well. Receiver, but like those are spots that are a lot more easily filled out of the portal than quarterback, and are a lot more affordable as well. So I just think that it all is very intriguing when you have this month coming up with so much movement going on. But I just get the sense that like it was year one. Like, if they really feel like they're onto something special, if Evan Cooper has designs on being a coordinator, like, wait another year and your opportunities are probably going to be better. Terrence Knighton, you've got a heck of a defensive line group coming back this year. Wait another year. And like, I think your opportunities are going to be better. So I don't know, with all the loyalty that this staff has expressed to Rule and what they owe him for what they have in their careers. Like, I just would be surprised if after 1 year you see a lot of those guys taking other opportunities.
Sure. The NFL jobs break late because the season doesn't end until January. So we won't know anything about Knighton.
Yeah.
Right away. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just saying that he did a good job, and he's a former NFL player. And Matt Rule knows people, and Terrence Knighton, if he got an opportunity to coach an NFL defensive line, I think he'd take it. I think that's a natural act. So all I'm trying to do is set the table for possibilities. I'm not saying that I have some sort of inside information, but these are the things that I think they think about, and you have to think about. As you process through, you got to have a board. You got to have a board. Mike Dawson left for the Giants, remember, like in January one year. So you should never quite know. Let's move on to basketball. Creighton, Nebraska, Sunday. Tom, this is going to be, I think this could be one of the rowdiest crowds we've seen at Nebraska in a long time.
Yeah, I think the dynamic is different, especially with Creighton's loss last week. But it changed a year ago when Nebraska beat them, and coming back this year, Creighton's big trio all came back, and so they started in the top 10. And you look down the road and you go, well, Creighton's going to be favored. They're the better team. We don't know what Nebraska is yet. Well, Nebraska's turned out to be pretty good, and they've been consistent, and they've got some inside guys who can score. They can hit the threes. They can play well defense. They seem to have some balance, and they look like a team that could give Creighton problems. I expect them to. Again, I don't know what Hoiberg's going to do, but it worked last year. He packed the inside and dared Creighton to beat him outside the line on their home court, and they couldn't do it. So I wouldn't be surprised if he tried it after the way they shot at Colorado State. Of course, we don't know what they're going to do tonight, but I'd be shocked if they didn't shoot well tonight. They're just too good not to. But it's shaped up as really a hell of a game. Maybe, and I'll probably regret saying this. It was like the most even matchup in a long time in this series. Now I watch somebody will get blown out, but I expect Creighton to be back on their feet with their confidence and their shots back, and I expect Nebraska to throw everything at them, and they've got a pretty interesting team.
You called him the potluck team. I love that line.
Yeah, I'm gonna see Hoiberg today. I'll drop that on him, see what he thinks. They had a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how he put the team together. And one thing I want to ask him is, Fred was a 4-year guy, but at Iowa State, way back when. But he seems to have a lot of success coaching these transfers. And why is that? How is he connected? He brought those guys in last year, and the 3 transfers played great. And then this year he's got more transfers, and they're playing well. What is it about him and transfers? They seem to have bigger roles, and the guys who come into Creighton who transfer are role players. Their program is not made up for that.
Right.
They're used as sort of a supplemental way. But Hoiberg, yeah, I mean, these guys are the big players in the team. It's really fascinating to me. So, but yeah, I see him as a team that really has answers inside and outside. And so, if you're defending him, what part of the potluck dinner do you take away? I mean, it's interesting.
I agree. They pose multiple threats with multiple lineups. They're tricky all over the court. You take away Casey, which I think they can do if Creighton wants to do that. That doesn't mean that you're going to take away Bryce Williams and Rink Mass or Juwan Gary. And I'm not even mentioning CJ Wilcher, who can score 15 on a good night. The reality is Creighton has 3 guys that can quote unquote go off right now. And Tom, you know Creighton well. The big 3 are Trey Alexander, Baylor Shireman, and Ryan Kalkbrenner. Out of those 3, Shireman's having a great year. I mean, he's benefited from some of the changes. Trey had a great season up to the last 2 games, and Kalkbrenner's been okay. Like I think he's kind of up and down, but then after that, they've got Mason Miller and Isaac Trout and these other guys, and those aren't necessarily guys you think are going to score 20 on a given night, are they?
They could. They absolutely could, but then not every night, certainly. But I think, Isaac Trout's just getting started. He's just started playing college basketball. He didn't play last year at Virginia. So he's an interesting guy. So is Shireman. They're coming into Lincoln. And these are Central Nebraska kids. And I find that it's almost like a homecoming in a way for these guys. It's so I think Shireman could. I mean, that would certainly be a guy to look for. Wouldn't be irony. Maybe it would be fitting. He had a big day Sunday.
Would.
But I just certainly see that they got a lot of options who can shoot. They gave up athleticism. The guys they lost, they're not as athletic, but it's a better offensive team. But they got to get the guards figured out right now. Ashworth has been up to a slow start. Looks like he's having trouble adjusting maybe right now. And again, you had these 2 guys who are going to both play point guard. Maybe they've got to figure out who's doing what right now. But in some games, Trey has taken over, and
right.
So what do where's Ashworth fit in with that? The Iowa game, he looked lost a little bit. That game was so fast and so crazy, but he's supposed to fit in right with that. It's just taking time for him. He'll be fine, but they're not going to get more athletic. That's the one thing. Creighton will not get more athletic. They'll shoot it better, but they're as athletic as they're going to get. Now they've got Jason Green, who's going to be healthy, and he's already playing. He helps them down low. But, I see, a guy like Frederick King Sunday. Koke Carpenter's on the bench resting. Here comes big old Frederick King, and he's in there rebounding the dunk. And, Nebraska's going to have to, be aware of, the Creighton bench is a lot better. A Farabello can come off the bench and start going at it too. So, but here comes Sam Hoiberg. I mean, it's a fascinating game. Sam Hoiberg's going to come off the bench flying and shooting and diving for balls, and he's going to energize the building. Everybody loves him. So I think it's going to be a great game. Nebraska certainly doesn't have a lot of juice in their schedule. That's okay. Just win, baby. But there's a couple games that could give them a little bit of resume juice, and this is one of them.
Isn't this this is a big momentum game for the program too? I mean, what an opportunity they have in front of them. They're undefeated. They're already getting votes as a top 25 team. If you beat Creighton on your home floor, like, people are buying in, right? This is a validation game for what they've done so far against a schedule generally where they're the better team and have the better talent. I mean, if they beat Creighton, like, what, hop aboard, right? Like, everybody's on that bandwagon. It's going to make for a fun month with Kansas State, and then the start of the Big Ten slate coming up. I think that's, to me, not following it as closely is what stands out. It's like, man, this is the game that really draws in casual fans and could make this, potentially a season that people remember.
Mm-hmm. This is a big one. Nebraska's had a December swoon. Even last year they had it. They beat Creighton, but then they lost some other games, and a lot of that's had to do with the Big Ten teams they play. They're not getting sandbagged in the Big Ten this year. So, they get Creighton obviously Sunday, but then they go to Minnesota. Minnesota's a beatable team. They're not very good. And then they get Michigan State. And I think most people would say that if you're going to play Michigan State, play them early, because they get better as the season goes on, but early you can take them. And Nebraska gets Michigan State, instead of getting them at the last game of the year, they get them now, and it's a winnable game. So I think there's lots of things to like about Nebraska's December schedule, but this one on Sunday, if they can grab it, if they were to finish 2-2 in that December stretch where they face Creighton, Minnesota, Michigan State, and Kansas State, I think you feel good about the team's trajectory. 1-3, that's about what they've done before. 0-4, and you're fighting an uphill battle. I think that's a reasonable way of looking at it. And we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see kind of where it shakes out. Shall we do the picks?
We have some work to do, Sam.
Well, our final pick will be the Creighton Nebraska basketball game. So we'll get to that.
I had a bad week last week.
No worse than us. You're still tied with. You're still 11 ahead. So, all right, you're doing good. I'll leave it at that. All right, let us begin. Oklahoma State, Texas, the Big 12 championship.
Texas.
Evan.
Texas.
And I will take Texas. Miami of Ohio, Toledo, the MAC championship.
Boy.
I'm taking Miami of Ohio.
I'll go Toledo.
Only Toledo.
Okay. The AAC championship, and this is pretty much the game to see who's going to go to the New Year's Six Bowl. SMU Tulane. If Tulane wins, they're in it. I think SMU will be in it too, but we'll see. SMU Tulane in the AAC championship.
Tulane.
Evan.
Yeah, Tulane.
Smooth for me. Louisville, Florida State. This is the tightest line of the bunch. 2.5, Florida State.
There's always a chaos game, an upset game. I'm going Louisville.
The Ville. Evan?
Florida State.
Florida State for me. The Mountain West title game. Boise, UNLV. I'll take UNLV.
Yeah, I'll go Vegas.
UNLV.
UNLV. All right. The Big Ten championship. Michigan, Iowa. I'll take Michigan.
Yeah, as much as Kirk Ferentz, I agree with him. And if Iowa won, it'd be funny. I'm going to go Michigan.
Got to go Michigan as well.
Michigan. Georgia, Alabama in the SEC title game.
Georgia.
Great song. Evan.
I'm going to go Bama.
There you go.
Alabama.
There's some chaos.
Yep. Let's make it rain.
I don't see it. Georgia. Oregon, Washington, the Pac-12 championship game. This is basically to decide which team makes the playoff.
I'm gonna go Ducks.
Ducks?
Yep.
Okay. Evan?
Washington.
Okay. Oregon for me. I don't know. I think Oregon's a better football team if their coach gets out of the way because they can run the ball better than Washington. But the Kansas City Chiefs were the better football team a couple years ago, and the Bengals beat them twice. So you just never know. Just never quite know.
Be a great game.
And it should be. Yeah. And finally, Creighton, Nebraska basketball.
Creighton.
See you for Tom.
Nebraska.
Oh,
they're at home. They're at home. They did it last year. Creighton can go cold from deep. Nebraska.
I'm gonna go Nebraska. I don't know. Creighton's good. I feel like this is the time for Nebraska, and they win by 2. All right, that are our picks for this week. And that's our Pick 6 podcast for this week. We will be back next week to I don't know. Talk about something. By then the transfer portal will be open and the Hounds will be, it'll be released that and we'll be going. There'll be lots of guys in the portal. We'll be able to talk about that. For Tom and Evan, I'm Sam. Thanks for listening to the Pick 6 podcast.